And today, right, I'm going to share with you a story on how I remembered everything, how I learned how I can remember everything. And this story, it begins with a question mark. Because before I started school, I was quite anxious because I did not know how it was possible that my other classmates, they seemed to remember things quite well. And for me, I thought I was hopeless at remembering things. I thought I was born with a poor memory. So can you raise your hand up if you ever thought that your memory was, not as good as the people around you? Yeah, I mean, I thought the same myself. And how many of you would like to understand how to remember everything? Yeah, the same here. And so I guess we have quite a lot in common. So when I first started on my research, I encountered this question, which is memory a talent? If memory is not a talent, then, it's great, it's a skill, we can learn it. But if memory is a talent, then what's the point? Why are we trying to improve something that is a talent? So in my first pit stop, I looked up this guy, and this guy is Solomon. And Solomon, he was one of those people we call savants. And savants are people who are able to remember anything unconsciously without any effort. And Solomon was a documented case whose abilities are incredible. What the researchers did was that they conducted a test on him that lasted 17 years. So 17 years ago, right, they tested him on a list of 80 numbers, 80 random numbers. And 17 years later, they asked Solomon, so do you remember what were the 80 numbers? And Solomon was able to tell them all the numbers. And Solomon even told the interviewers, what's the color of the shirt that they were wearing on that day, which was not even part of the test. But Solomon was that incredible. But after researching on Solomon, it became a bit depressing because, if there are people like this, does it mean that there is no point for us to figure out how to improve our memories? But I thought that the journey shouldn't end here. I should find more ways to do so. And what I did next was that I made myself a case study. I thought if a normal person like me can do some incredible feat, like remembering 1,000 digits of pi, then perhaps memory is not a talent. And I'm very glad to report to you that I managed to do it. So here is 1,000 digits of pi, and you can test me on it. And the way we are going to test it is this, I will just throw a bear. Please don't let it hit you. Who got Mr. Bear? Did anybody pick up Mr. Bear or Mr. Bear on the floor? Okay. Okay, the lady here. Okay, I might have met you before. Can you throw the bear to someone else? Just randomly. Okay, so can you give me okay, I'm going to start closing my eyes now, so it's a fair test. Can you give me a number between 1 to 10? 9. James, can you click to a slide 801 to 900? Can the gentleman throw the bear to someone else? And the people in the front row, make sure I'm closing my eyes. Is Mr. Bear somewhere? Okay, can the lady give me a number between 1 to 10 as well? That will be the line which we are tested on. 7. Okay, so the slide behind says 801 to 900, is that right? Yep. Okay, and let me find line 7 for you. I am starting to see the number 3. Is that right? I might be wrong. So if I'm right, tell me I'm right. Yes. Okay. Please don't give me a heart attack. Yeah, silence is usually when I get it wrong. 7. Yes. 8. Yes. 3. Yes. 8. Yes. 7. Yes. 5. Yes. 2. 8? Yes. And I'm missing one last digit, is that right? Yes. Okay, that last digit is 8. Okay, thank you. Okay. So now we have seen that memory is not a talent. Memory is something that somehow any normal person can get a hold of. But why As in, how is anybody able to do this? And let me just tell you right now here, right? It's not that I acquired some superhuman ability. Sometimes I meet friends, they pop up from nowhere, and I look at them and I just think to myself, oh gosh, I do not know what's this person's name. And my friends, they actually know that I remember 1,000 digits of pi, so they'll just assume Norvin must know my name. So I just say, hey man, and I just keep quiet. And they usually assume that I know their name. But I do not know. Usually I make an excuse, I run off to the toilet and I check their names out on Facebook. Yeah, then I come back to talk to them. Yeah. So you see, like, it's not as though I became superhuman, but what I did was I acquired knowledge of how the human memory works. So memory is, well, it's a talent, yes and no, because there are some savants out there, but there are people like us who can actually do it as well. So how is it that Solomon and me remember? Like, why is it that Solomon is able to remember and I can remember as well? So Solomon, he's born with this condition called synesthesia. It's a medical condition that is very remarkable. A person with synesthesia experiences what we call a mixing up of senses. So a person can hear a piano note, like the note G, and actually taste like char kway teow or something. So that was the mixing up of the senses of taste and sound. And a person can see a row of numbers printed in black against white as a rainbow of colors, because the person sees things that are not there. Solomon experiences life in this way. Like, he wrote in his autobiography, one day he went out, he bought ice cream from a store, and he asked the ice cream seller, oh, what flavor of the ice cream do you have left? And the seller just said, like, fruit ice cream. And the seller said in such a rude tone that Solomon was shocked. And he was shocked not just because of the rude tone, but he saw smoke rising from her head and fire come out from her mouth. That's how Solomon experiences the world due to his condition of synesthesia. So let's bear this in mind for a moment, because that is part of the puzzle. And how do I remember things? I remember things with this device we call the memory palace. So this is just a memory technique. This memory technique, other people know about it. It has been known since 300 BC. But let's just understand this technique and we will move on to how the general theory of memory works. So let's have one activity now. Tell me, how do you remember these 5 items normally? Let's say this was a shopping list, and somehow in this shopping list there's an F9 button as well, because the F9 button on your computer spoiled. Yeah, so tell me, how would you normally remember this in real life? Anyone? Some brave, courageous soul. What?
Read a story around it.
Ah, a story, that's interesting. And what else? Finds associations. Whoa, okay. This is already a rather strong answer. Writing it down. Will you write it down a lot of times?
Just one time.
Just once, okay.
Remember the initials.
Remember the initials. Will you do anything with the initials?
Make up a sentence.
That's interesting. That's like making an acronym and a sentence. Okay, anyone else?
Memorize it.
Memorize. Just stare at it or something?
Like just repeat it again.
Just repeat it. Ah, I see. Okay.
Find a common link within all of them.
Okay, good. Okay, so we see a huge range and spectrum of answers, and all of these ways of remembering that are common, they can all be explained under one common theory of memory later. So let me just share with you one technique which is called the memory palace. The memory palace actually incorporates many of the suggestions given, which is to form a story and also to to picture it. And okay, nobody said picture it, but the memory palace is one such device. Okay, and here is one activity. Can all of you stand up? This will make the memory palace more effective. Okay, so close your eyes for me. Imagine that you are standing in the front door of your home, and in front of your door, you see a giant carton of milk. This giant carton of milk, it is so huge, it stretches the ceiling or to the sky, and there's one drop of milk that rolls down the side and it touches the floor. It touches the floor, but instead of the floor, you see a railway track. The government decided to build a railway track towards your home. You do not know why it's there. You open the door of your home, you take a few steps more, and you encounter a F9 button. You do not know why the F9 button from a computer is there, but it's gigantic and it's blocking your way. You push it aside, and you take a few steps more, and you step on a baby's nappy. I mean, it's dirty, so you rush off to the toilet, and you wash it off with soap, but this soap creates so much foam, and this foam washes you out of the toilet. All right, you can open your eyes now. Okay, so, okay, all of you can take your seat. Yeah. Okay, so what we have done is that we have created your first memory palace, and this memory palace works in this way. Whenever you want to encounter the 5 items on the slide, all you need to do is to transport yourself back mentally in your front door of the home, and you'll be able to see the pictures there in your imagination. And these images, they are so sticky, they'll stick to your head for about a month or so before they slowly disappear. And now, right, I would like to congratulate you because you have actually remembered the first 10 digits of the number pi. And I will explain to you why. If we run the pictures through a translation key, we can actually get the original numbers of pi. This translation key is arbitrary, which means that it's made up, it's artificial. I made it up. I made it so that the number 3 is represented by the letter M, and the number 1 is represented by the letter L. So when I see the picture milk, I think of the word milk, and I spell out milk. And to me, milk is M-I-L-K. M would be 3, and L would be 1. I and K, they are unimportant letters in this translation key. And if we just run all the pictures through this translation key, we get the original numbers of pi. So this translation key, if you are interested in it, you can look it up. It's called the major system. The major system is a translation key that works for just numbers into letters into pictures. So this is how the major system works. It's useful if you want to remember numbers. And if we take a more abstract view, a more general view of the memory palace, the basic process is that you have information that you translate into pictures somehow using your own translation key. It can be anything as long as it makes sense to you. And as long as you can put it in the picture, you can put it in a room, and you have created a memory palace. So this is how the memory palace works. Do any of you have any questions at this point of time? Okay, that's good. And now we come to a very interesting question, which is why does synesthesia and the memory palace both work to create strong memories? This question can be rephrased as, how do we remember things in the first place? Okay, and now this is an interesting puzzle. Okay, can anybody tell me what does this look like? Come on, guesses. Okay, I already hear neurons and synapses. So that is what it is. And what does it look like? Trees. Forest. What forest?
A bird forest. A forest on fire.
A forest on fire, okay. And
In a cave.
sorry?
Painting in a cave.
Painting in a cave, okay. That's very artistic. Anyone else?
Nervous system.
Okay, yeah, yes, it is the nervous system in a way, because the brain is part of the nervous system. And anyone else? Sorry?
Like one of those granite or marble types, not granite, but one of those limestones.
Limestones.
Limestone.
Limestones, I see. Okay. So limestones, forests, cave paintings, they're all things that contain patterns within themselves. Would you say that? It is clear that we see here that there's some kind of patterns in which the brain cells are organized. Okay, what this picture actually is a sashimi thin slice of your brain that is put under a microscope and is dyed. Yeah, and the darker dots, they are actually the brain cells, the neurons, and the branches, like a forest, which spread out from these cells, they are the synapses, the connections between the brain cells. And it's fantastic how big the brain is. The brain is a galaxy of about 60 to 70 billion neurons, and it has roughly 70 to 80 trillion synapses. So there are much more connections than the cells themselves. And 70 to 80 trillion synapses, that's such a huge number. If you went to Sentosa and you counted the grains of sand one by one, you will never reach that number. Now, there's a very interesting neuroscience theory called Connectionism that attempts to explain how the human memory works. And Connectionism, it views the brain as a very physical object, which is why looking at this picture, the physical picture of the brain, helps us to understand the brain better. Connectionism basically says this: connections are important to how the brain works. And memory, physically, must be a network of cells joined to each other. So this very simple line diagram is an abstraction of what memory is. Memory would look like this in real life if you draw it. Yeah. If memory is a network of cells, then our collective memory will be networks of cells joined up to each other. So memory is a network of networks. That's how our memory is like. So right now, I would like all of us to attempt to recall something. And this will help you understand how your memory works better. Okay, so this is an activity again. You can stand up. Okay, so remember that just now when you did the memory palace, you were standing up as well. This was to help you. This was to help you again in this activity, because in this activity you'll team up with a partner and you'll test each other on the memory palace. But the thing is this: the person who isn't able to remember has to sit down. But this is the thing: this is not a competition, so you have to help your partner recall, prompt your partner with clues if your partner is unable to remember all the 5 items. Okay, so the team that have both members standing up is a good team. Yeah, and everybody can be winners here, okay? Okay, so you can help each other out now. And as you recall the 5 items in the memory palace, pay attention to how you are recalling them. What are you using to recall? All of you can sit down now. Okay, I'd like some of you to describe to me how the process of recalling works. Like, when you record the second item, do you have to recall the first item first? Is it easier if everything is in sequence? Okay, and let's say, how do you remember the railway track? Do you remember the railway track because of the drop of milk that rolls down from the milk carton? Okay, so you see here, right, that we have successfully found ways, strategies to recall things. And we have learned it by the connections inbuilt within the memory palace. If you think about it, this is related to the physical structure of the brain. Memories are recalled sequentially because physically they are connected with each other. And this is the basic explanation that Connectionism gives. So that was the chain of recall that we did. Memories are interconnected. And the fundamental problem of memory will be this: if you need to connect brain cells physically in order to form a memory, your brain now sees a new information coming in. Your brain is massive, it's a galaxy. It needs to know where to put this memory in. And it needs to know which should be the neighbors of this memory. And this is a fundamental problem of memory. If we look at a very, very simple mnemonic device, which Singaporean students will be familiar with, Tuakaso. Tuakaso is an acronym. It's an acronym to remember math formulas. But why does Tuakaso work? Tuakaso works because it's a very simple connection of 2 different networks. One network used for nonsensical sounds, Tuakaso. Another network used for the mathematical formulas. Tuakaso is a device which creates connections for your brain, and it solves the fundamental problem of memory. Why does synesthesia and the memory palace work? Synesthesia, a person born with synesthesia sees connections that are not there. And all these connections helps the person remember everything. In Solomon's brain, there's many, many different locations. The brains can easily slot in new memories because everything to him is interconnected. Like black smoke, fire, they are connected with a root voice. And this helps his brain remember everything perfectly. Why is it that the memory palace works? The memory palace is a process for creating connections. Creates nonsensical connections, storytelling connections, it creates connections. So, stated very simply, you remember once you connect. And how do you best remember school stuff or any heavy, dense subject? This is a talk that I gave at NUS Law, and I challenged myself in front of my friends to remember 200 law cases, and 200 law cases is about 3 million words. I spent 4 days, 10 hours each day reading, and I skipped school so I can remember everything for the talk. And when I was doing this, I used the memory palace and I failed. Because the memory palace is not suitable for learning things. The memory palace requires you to translate logic into nonsense in order to remember. What I did instead was to realize that that any dense logical subject is a web of connections, is dots connected to each other. And what we need to do to remember is simply to understand all the logical connections that a subject has. And this is the best way to remember a school subject. So these are dots. These are the dots that represent the different bits of knowledge you need. And we need the lines. We need to draw the connections between them. And when we do it, we form a memory. So this is how you remember school subjects. Okay, we do not have, we just use an example here. Okay, do any of you remember the volume of a cylinder? This is a very simple secondary school formula. Oh wow, okay, pi r square h, yeah. Okay, that's excellent, a lot of you remember. Can you see a connection between the formula pi r square h and a Pringles can full of potato chips? Okay, it's a very counterintuitive thing, but some students understand why is it that the volume of a cylinder is pi r square h. Pi r square h is the surface area. Pi r square is the surface area, and when you times height, you get the volume of a cylinder. It can be explained in terms of a Pringles can with potato chips. Every potato chip is very thin. If we say that the thickness, the height of the potato chip is negligible because it's ultra thin, we only need the surface area of the potato chip, and we times the surface area of the potato chip with the number of potato chips, and we get the volume of a Pringles can. Yeah, so that is a very good way to see a real-life example that illustrates a principle that helps you understand. And this picture is of Richard Feynman, who's very, very famous for doing things like this. If you want to know more, you can read his books. Any of his books will review his way of thinking, his way of seeing connections in the world. And I would like to mention here that Richard Feynman's IQ is 124, which means that he's just an above average person in terms of IQ. But if you compare his IQ to someone like Einstein, whose IQ is 160 plus, Richard Feynman also won the Nobel Prize in Physics, same achievement in Einstein. And he did it with an above average IQ that's not near remarkable standards. And he did this by primarily seeing meaningful connections between what he studies and the real world. So this is the Feynman method. Yeah. Okay, so this is a simple recap. You can just look at the images on your own and think to yourself what they mean. And as you do so, you'll be able to remember this presentation better. And I would like to end off by saying thank you.